What's up, everybody? We have some news to talk about. The market's closed today, but Bitcoin's always open. We have some recent news that's scaring people a little bit. The US has been cleared to sell $6.5 billion worth of Bitcoin, and this is coming before Donald Trump's inauguration. Now, let me know, guys, is this some kind of retaliation thing? Do you think this is just a total coincidence? It's just interesting that things are happening when they are. But the Doge, we're not talking about the meme coin Doge, we're talking about the Department of Justice. They're poised to auction off $6.5 billion worth of Bitcoin, and this was seized from Silk Road. This follows a December 30th court ruling, concluding a legal battle over ownership of this Bitcoin. Maybe it's just odd timing. This is kind of interesting that this is happening now. Whether you like Donald Trump or not, we know that there is talks of Donald Trump potentially initiating a strategic Bitcoin reserve with the Treasury. Now, whether you think something like that is or isn't going to happen, that's beside the point. We know that that is going to be talked about. We know it's something that is coming on the horizon. I just find it interesting that now we're going to sell that large Bitcoin holdings. And this isn't all the government holds. As of January 9, the US government holds about 198,000 Bitcoin, but they plan to potentially sell off that $6.5 billion associated with Silk Road. And as a side note, look how far Bitcoin has come. Do you guys know what Silk Road is? This was like a dark website. You could use Bitcoin to buy all kinds of nefarious things. Bitcoin is now used as an investment product. Bitcoin now has Wall Street's acceptance. Bitcoin now has these large companies adopting these Bitcoin strategies. That is soon going to bleed into other coins, and we're already hearing that with Solana. But you know, the environment for Bitcoin is just so much different from even 10 years ago. Now, Fox Business contributor Jason Williams claims the Biden administration is instructing the DOJ to offload thousands of Bitcoin during a bull market, fully aware that the incoming Trump administration may buy it back at higher prices. This is a blatant perversion of the government's fiduciary responsibility. I swear, this is like my 5th try. We're buying Bitcoin for approximately 94,000. What price will Trump have to pay to buy them back? Higher. Possibly. What if the US starts selling this Bitcoin and it causes mass panic, similar to Mt. Gox, when we had like $9 billion worth of Bitcoin that had to be sold? Imagine if this causes Bitcoin to pull back and then we're able to load up on Bitcoin a lot cheaper. What if something even bigger is going on? What if this is all a part of the game? Now, after this ruling, Bitcoin did dip 2.78%. You can contribute it slightly to this or anything else. History shows that the US government Bitcoin auctions have had little lasting impact on Bitcoin prices. Between March 2023 and now, the US government Bitcoin holdings have dropped from 236,000 to 198,000. There's only a reduction of about 38,000 Bitcoin, or about $3.5 billion. So this would be about half. Despite this sell-off, Bitcoin surged 375% during the same period, meaning between March 2023 and now. A lot of this could be attributed, obviously, to just Bitcoin's cycle, how it always follows its cycle. It could be attributed to the US spot Bitcoin ETF inflows. I do think once we find out that they are actually actively selling, this could cause a short-term drop. This could cause some short-term fear. Look at what the government has missed out on. The US government misses out on $17.9 billion in Bitcoin profits. The US government has already missed out on some large profits through its previous Bitcoin sales. They've seized and sold approximately 195,000 Bitcoin over the years, generating roughly $366.5 million in revenue from these auctions. However, at current prices, the cumulative value of that sold Bitcoin would be worth about $18 billion. And as said by our favorite Ki Young Ju, the founder and CEO of CryptoQuant, the US government selling $6.5 billion could be absorbed in just a week. Do not panic. That might be a little bit optimistic, but I totally feel what he's saying. When there's some weeks where we're seeing multiple billion dollars of inflow from the spot Bitcoin ETFs, it doesn't take long for this $6.5 billion to be absorbed. Remember Mt. Gox and the wonderful buying opportunity that brought us. It brought Bitcoin down from its all-time high at the time of 74,000 all the way down to about 49,000. That marked the bottom in August. Mt. Gox isn't done selling yet. They might potentially sell one more time before October. That is the plan. But remember, the market is always forwards looking. At some point, this will be priced in. Sure, it could bring some more selling pressure, but take advantage of it as long as this doesn't start in late 2025. If this is happening at this time in the cycle, I think that's good. We also have some more interesting news in terms of Bitcoin and Bitcoin holdings and all that kind of stuff. US-based Bitcoin reserves flipped foreign holdings, now 65% greater, according to CryptoQuant. Bitcoin reserves domiciled in the US, or Bitcoin reserves that are in the US, outpace holdings in offshore control by 65%. And putting that into a ratio would be a 1.65. US-based Bitcoin storehouses increased rapidly from January of last year, buoyed by spot Bitcoin exchange-traded fund approvals, and these US-based spot Bitcoin ETFs now have accumulated over $110 billion, more than 5% of Bitcoin's market cap, and there's no end in sight. And of course, we have MicroStrategy aggressively adding to their Bitcoin balance. They bought 258,000 Bitcoin for $22 billion in 2024. with plans to purchase even more in 2025. And here's a little snippet that's pretty interesting. Additionally, a joint survey by Bitwise asset management and analytics firm VettaFi revealed that 96% of wealth advisors reported increased client inquiries about crypto in 2024. There is interest in it. The study has noted an 11% rise in cryptocurrency allocations as investors warmed to the emerging asset class. Now that we have a full year seeing the performance of the spot Bitcoin ETFs, people are going to look at that as kind of a judging on how this is going to do. There's no doubt that people in Wall Street are seeing the amazing performance of these spot Bitcoin ETFs. What happens when you see these crypto allocations continue to rise? What happens when it becomes seen as smart by Wall Street to hold 20% of your portfolio in Bitcoin or Bitcoin spot ETFs? When we get to a point where it's too high risk not to hold Bitcoin. The ones that hold Bitcoin are outperforming the ones that don't. This is a competitive game and everyone wants a piece. Now we have an interesting article from Mark Cuban kind of comparing Bitcoin to gold. I don't necessarily agree with all of this, and if we were faced with potentially a recession, I could definitely see people pile into gold and out of Bitcoin. Let's face it, Bitcoin is still a risk-on asset. It is still speculative. Mark Cuban states that he'd rather own Bitcoin than gold. Both gold and Bitcoin are viewed by many as stores of value. I think that whole store of value argument is mainly because of the capped supply of Bitcoin, is mainly because of its scarcity. It isn't necessarily because of its potential safety in a recession. It isn't because it's like gold in that it is so stable and there isn't going to be like a big 50% correction. It is not at all like gold in that sense. And if we did have a recession, I'm pretty confident in saying that Bitcoin would crash along with risk-on tech. According to Mark Cuban, the biggest advantage Bitcoin has over gold is its utility. It is more practical. People aren't going to walk around with gold bars. What are you going to do with it? Let me slice you off a little piece? Meanwhile, Bitcoin has proven itself to function as a currency. It's easier to buy and sell. You can fractionalize it, you can use it to buy things, you can transfer it internationally. And so I think it has more value than gold. Bitcoin did outperform gold in 2024 with a 136% gain. Gold ended with a 26% gain. Commodity analysts are watching Bitcoin in the new year. Its momentum could draw interest away from gold. Bitcoin's rally to all-time highs in 2020 impact gold prices by approximately 3%. Here's where the kind of store of value really comes to play. Other analysts emphasize gold's greatest advantage over the leading cryptocurrency, its stability. While Bitcoin experienced a remarkable rally this year, its prices started the year nearly 40% below their 2021 all-time highs. If you don't like volatility, you won't really like Bitcoin. If you like something that's stable, that isn't going to lose you potentially 50% in a bear market, you probably don't like Bitcoin. If you see the bigger picture and can follow the cycle, if you know that at the worst, you could potentially buy at the wrong time, and all you have to do is wait a year, 2 years, that's basically the risk. Patience. The price you pay, the cost is patience. There's times that Bitcoin's really going to induce fear. There's times that Bitcoin's going to drop 20, 30, 40%. And people aren't going to feel as much like it's a store of value. Over the long term, sure, it's definitely a store of value. The supply is capped. But because of its volatility, because of its speculative nature, there are huge swings. And in bear markets, we will see these large drops, these huge corrections. But if you follow the Bitcoin 4-year cycle, you know to load up during those points. I think Bitcoin and gold shouldn't necessarily be compared. They're two completely different things. They're used for two completely different things. They are seen by some as a store of value. But to me, why that is because of Bitcoin's capped supply. Bitcoin by nature is scarce, gold is somewhat scarce by nature as well, and maybe that's where people are drawing the connection, but that's basically where the connection ends. Now looking at Bitcoin, we're approaching that important 91.5 area that we have held up. We did touch it and bounce. You know, if we do see more fear because of the US moving forwards with selling their Bitcoin, we can definitely head towards the bottom of this larger pattern, head towards 85K. That's not out of the question in my opinion. Especially as we're approaching inauguration, especially as we're approaching the Fed meeting, CPI and PPI next week, it is going to be rough. The market can tank Bitcoin if they want, ahead of all these massive good catalysts coming for Bitcoin. What does 2025 have in store from the US spot Bitcoin ETFs? We're definitely going to see more inflows than outflows. In past cycles, the year after the halving is always the best year. Are we going to break that trend for the first time in Bitcoin's history? I think not. And also we have a massive amount of M2 global expansion coming throughout 2025 and into early 2026. Bitcoin follows it 85% of the time. There is no reason that Bitcoin isn't going to go higher in 2025. Bitcoin is a lot different than the Silk Road days. Bitcoin is a lot different now that we have BlackRock talking about it. Need I say more? Now I do want to pull up the Heikin-Ashi candles. These can give a pretty good indication of our trend. It makes it more clear what's going on. We are clearly been in a downtrend if you didn't notice. Here's the daily, still red. Here's something interesting with these Heikin-Ashi candles. Typically when you see a candle with a large bottom wick and then the following candle is green with no wick underneath, that is a good indicator of a trend changing, such as right here, again right here. Now when you zoom out to the weekly on the Heiken Ashi, does it really look like we've been in a bad downtrend? Look at all this green. We are still holding this level up. If we can hold this and bounce off it, I see no reason why we don't rally to 120 in a short period of time. Now if you guys think we're overbought like we were last cycles, we're not even near there. When you look at the weekly on the RSI, it is nowhere near when it normally tops out. Or also a break of the 50 on the weekly is a good sign. You can see last cycle, you know, people probably got shaken out right here, but the 50 held up and it went on to go create new all-time highs, very slightly higher than the previous all-time highs, but still the rally continued. The bull market wasn't over. I think this, along with many other indicators, I'll leave them down below for you guys, will be a good sign of if things are topping out. If we come down to this 50 MA later in the cycle, I mean, it's 69,000 right now. If we do our little rally thing, you could see this 50 MA get up closer to the 90s. And maybe at some point in 2025, we come down and test 90,000. Maybe we hold it up, maybe we don't. That might mark the end of the party. The break of the 50 MA marked the end of the party here, and it also came up and tested it as a resistance. There is a clear reaction on it. Keep an eye on it. Also, when you look at the daily on the 50, last cycle, we followed it very consistently. Last time, we pretty much followed the 50 MA for a very, very good period of time, all the way into April of 2021 from October of 2020. This is not the same here. We did break the 50 MA as you guys saw. Sorry, I'm all over the place. But this is not the same here. You can see that we broke the 50 MA. We kind of tried to come back over it. We're back under it again. We need to reclaim that 50 MA. Bitcoin needs to reclaim 98,000. Take the psychological 100K back. Things might be rough on the short term. If we see a bunch of selling from the US, that will bring some fear. If you're thinking about buying Bitcoin this late in the cycle, this will be a buying opportunity. There won't be very many more. You might have to wait until 2026, 2027, the next potential crypto winter, to get some really cheap Bitcoin again. And maybe the cycle is broken because of the spot Bitcoin ETFs and we just continue higher with small pullbacks along the way. I doubt it. I am following the cycle. And I think there will be at some point a major correction. Say we're at 200K, a 50% correction to have a bear market low at 100K. I mean, that would be pretty favorable if you ask me. Imagine next crypto winter being able to buy Bitcoin once more right around $100,000 before we blast off to who knows where. But how are you guys feeling about Bitcoin? Do you think the US government is doing this as a retaliation thing, or is it just a coincidence? How do you see Bitcoin versus gold? Is there a comparison? Are they two completely different asset classes? Are people stupid for trying to compare them? And where do you think the US spot Bitcoin ETFs are going this year? Are they going to end up with 10% of the Bitcoin supply by the year end? Always interested in your thoughts and opinions. Thanks as always for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time.